material that they buy. I followed the old woman to a big, spectacular mansion. And once inside, she told me to go and wait in the other room. I went into the other room and I was stunned to see a young, beautiful woman whose whole body was covered with jewels and pearls, who was sitting on a throne made out of precious gems. She was the most beautiful woman that I had ever seen. As soon as she spotted me, she came running over to me, and she had been overcome by lust and desire from the shaitan. She whispered that she wanted me to commit zina with her, to commit adultery with her. I got very worried and told her to fear Allah Azza wa Jal, but she was overcome with lust and desire that she did not take any notice. Now that happens when you are overcome with the lust, and especially when shaitan has gripped hold of you. He's really having you in his grip. It's going to be very, very difficult to get out of that. Sayyidina Miskin says, I got very worried and told her to fear Allah Azza wa Jal, but she was not moving away from me. When I saw how committed she was to doing this, I became even more worried. But I could not see any way out of this situation. Now look at this young man. He has sin in front of him, and that sin is coming towards him. That sin is giving him invitation openly. But this young man at that time, he has that fear of Allah Azza wa Jal which is burning in his heart. He said that I asked her permission to go to the bathroom. Hearing this, she called all of the servants, who were all young women, and said to them, take your master to the bathroom. As soon as I got to the bathroom, I tried to look for a way out, but there was no escape. He says, I became very scared. I'm scared of committing this horrible sin in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, and I feared the punishment of the day of hell, the punishment of hell. He said, I could only think of one thing to do. I gathered the impurities of the bathroom and wiped them all over my body. I made a scary looking face and ran out of the bathroom. She was waiting outside with a towel and water. I ran towards her, and when she saw what was on me, she ran away and started shouting for help. All of the servants surrounded me and forced me into a sack, took me out of the house and threw me in the garden. When I assumed that it was safe to come out, and that they had all gone, I got up and purified my clothes and my body, and I went home, but kept this incident to myself. That night, I had a strange dream, in which I saw someone who said to me, you resemble the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam in beauty. Do you recognize me? I replied, no, I don't. Who are you? And he replied, I am the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. After this, he wiped his hand on my face and body, and suddenly a beautiful fragrance, a beautiful smell came out of my face and body, and it was the fragrance of the hand of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, and that is why I am smelling so good. My dear Islamic brothers, the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal saved this young man from committing a horrible evil act. And because that he was blessed with seeing the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, who wiped his blessed hands on him, and he became fragrant for the rest of his life. My dear Islam brothers, what can you say about this person? Someone who was invited to commit a sin, but yet he had the fear of Allah. He had the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal which saved him. That is why in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned, two things will take a person into paradise. Number one is the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, and number two is good character. So these two things will take a person into the gardens of paradise. Fear of Allah Azza wa Jal is the one we heard about this young boy. And my dear Islam brothers, in the Quran, in many places, Allah Ta'ala talks about us having fear. In the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. O believers, fear Allah and be with the righteous people. Now when someone is with the righteous people, then all these satanic thoughts will not come into his mind. When someone is with the good people, when someone has good friends, then all these bad thoughts will not come into that person. And this is what we need to do, my dear Islam brothers. We need to save ourselves. We need to save ourselves from these thoughts of the shaitan. And inshallah, once we are successful, then inshallah, we will start climbing the ranks of piety. And it is piety and taqwa which Allah is looking from us. Allah Ta'ala is not bothered how many namaz we read. Allah Ta'ala is not looking at how many fasting we keep. These are means of getting closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. But He says in the Quran, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. That no doubt, those who are pious will be close to Allah Azza wa Jal. So those people who are pious, those people who fear Allah Azza wa Jal, and those people who think about their hereafter, are the people who shall be successful. And this is, my dear Islam brother, this is what is called modesty, haya. And the opposite of haya is be-haya, someone who doesn't have modesty. And if we look at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, there are many places the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about modesty. And in one hadith the Prophet ﷺ, he says, modesty, haya is part of the iman. And in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that those who do not have modesty, those who don't have haya, then let them do whatever they want because they are not part of us. So those people who are in our language, we call them Besharam. Those people who don't have modesty, who don't have haya, these people, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, leave them alone and let them do whatever they want because they will not be part of us. So can you see the words which the Prophet ﷺ, and especially the hatred and the anger for those people who don't have haya. In one button, if we look at the haya of the Sahaba-e-Kiram, there was an incident which I was reading a hadith that one companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he was walking home through the streets, and a young woman who was standing outside her house inviting this man to her house. And this young companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he was trapped in that. And he went to the house. And as soon as he put his foot inside first, he stopped and he thought to himself, what am I going to do? What am I doing? Allah Ta'ala is always watching upon me. Am I going to go and commit this horrible sin whilst Allah Ta'ala is watching me? As soon as he had that thought in his mind, he fell to the ground, fell unconscious, and passed away. Because of the fear of Allah, he passed away. And at that time, the Khalif was Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. When Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he heard the news of the passing away of this young boy, he said to his dad, why did you not call me? Because they buried him during the night. He said, why did you not call me so that I could have read the janazah of this young man? And the father, he told him, Ya Ameer-e-Mu'mineen, this is why I did not call you. And this was, he told him the story. And Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says, by Allah, I swear in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, that those people who have the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, and those people who die in the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, they will be rewarded with 2 paradises. They will be rewarded with 2 paradises. And if you look at the Sahaba-e-Kiram, my dear Islam brothers, sometimes, these are no doubt very, very special people. How did they become special? These Sahaba-e-Kiram had a life like we have a life. We work during the day, they work during the day as well. But the only difference is the taqwa and the piety these Sahaba-e-Kiram struggled for. And one of them things was haya. Haya, being modesty, is, like I said, part of our iman. And such that the Prophet ﷺ, he says that those people who have haya, who have modesty, Allah Ta'ala will protect these people from committing sins. Just like Sayyidina Miski, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, he had modesty, he had haya inside him. And because of his haya, Allah Ta'ala protected him. And because of his haya, Allah Ta'ala gave him such a high rank. And Allah Ta'ala sent Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam to make him smell fragrant. That is the reward you get when a person, he fears Allah Azza wa Jal. And my dear Islamic brothers, inshallah Azza wa Jal, we should all try have that modesty and that haya. Now, what is modesty? The Prophet ﷺ